Right, let's get into covering some of the bits from 2019 with the 2020 at the end. I've garnered much from this past year, from a personal growth wise, and I'm proud of the body of work I've delivered this past year more than others. Sometimes people forget that I'm learning as I go along as much as you all. I'm soul developing in growth also. And those lessons and learnings are never finished. It is a continuous cycle, not only for this lifetime, but your next. Your work that you do now is a pay it forward motion and action that will have major consequences for you all in the future. The other years I've done shows was about laying the foundation to then be able to build the house of truth upon it. As 2017 closed out, I knew the quickening of everything would unfold. And after that date in November of that year, it was a statement of, it is too late for the sleepers, as we call them, to catch up. But remember, for progress, pioneers, or way showers, as I like to call them, always have to create the path for the others to follow. Now, that statement brought the typical reactions of we can't leave them behind and the feeling of loss, which is atypical of many of us to focus on the loss and not the gains. To focus on what might have been instead of what can be. And that level of thinking has to change going forward. How far have we come is the focus, and then how far can we go? No one was left out of this progression movement. Those not in it chose to be that way. And it's no one's fault except their own. Ponderings increased again last year. Oh, the ponderings. Including the recent classic that has caused much gurring, harumphs, hair pulling, and angry or frustrated memes. As the saying goes, what goes up must come down. But what comes down has a missing space-time currently, and this can be tested by yourself. You will see, or as the case may be, you won't see it briefly. Maybe I'll answer that later in the show. Maybe I won't. I can feel the grrring going on again. Right. THI went on a steep learning curve in 2018, and people were thinking, where does this all end? As revelation after revelation came out of the dark and into the light. And some thought 2018 was a peak of it all, or the peak of it all. And many thought they have a grasp of things then, and of what is and has gone on. Oops. Because 2019 laid that to waste, as show after show revealed heavier and deeper pieces one after the other. Thursday shows almost became as prevalent as the must listen to shows that are on our thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org website. We went deeper into all about us, because that is the key to understanding our show. We can argue over politics, earth is flat or round, whether magic is good or not. It isn't. It was given to us by the gods to destroy humanity. But that is a journey of discovery for all individuals to find out themselves. whether the moon is natural or engineered, whether the trust is real or not, mass arrests happening or not, or this politician or that politician is more corrupt than the other. None of it in the real scheme of things matters. What matters is that every individual on the planet has the 5 basic needs in life without the need to struggle or find the most bizarre or heinous ways to make money just to exist. After attaining the 5 basic needs in life, you have all you need in life to grow the self. Knowledge needs to be garnered and consumed like a sponge, then wring out what is not needed. A common saying on our show, it's also a common saying for Kim when she's talking to clowns, and what happens next? Mass arrests happen, then what? Replace with more corrupt peoples, or will genuine people stand up and replace them? The trust funds come out. What happens next? Are people ready to look after the treasures and the life force energy, or waste it in a plethora of ill-prepared or self-serving genders and ideals? I will ask a question back to the members. If the trust funds came out in late April as we formed the THI state and country groups, were you ready? Be honest. The second question is, are you better prepared now? So the key to it all is preparation of the self to be able to perform the tasks ahead. And in a world of programming, competitive and comparative mindsets, greed, not need, the focus on the status of the self, that was always going to be a difficult proposition. But the shows have helped to get you to think, really think. Most people just react to the headlines and accept it as the truth. No, that is an assumption, which is a statistical analysis based on probability, which is not truth. Lots of words get bandied about in the alt media, like consciousness, 4 and 5D, love and light, red pilling. And yet too few, when asked what, when, or where is it, understand what they're actually saying. The words without understanding becomes a meme, which is memetics and soft MK Ultra brain entrainment. This show's not about me, Kim, the trust, the funding, the council or the UPU. It's about you and us. Nothing more and nothing less. And humanity's thinking levels are way short. Our ability to see and understand things as a collective, even on a basic level, is chronically lacking. And so this show, we started with the basics again, pondering on things, which leads to critical thinking, which leads to future thinking. The past is gone. It offers us nothing except a placeholder of what we can improve on going forward. So what happens next? Is the great question and conundrum to be applied in all walks and aspects of life. This show is about preparing you all for that phase. We're now in that phase. The object was not to elevate Kim or me, but us all. For too long now, humanity has dragged each other down into the gutter, that we never really needed a control system. We have done that to ourselves. Very nicely, I might add. But that in our group has changed. And our role is to expand that out into the masses. Immigration in the future will not be from country to country. It will be from their world into ours. Perhaps now that makes much more sense to you all. The object is to make all people important and also replaceable, to allow for a fluid transitions in all aspects of life. Not one Neo, but millions of Neos. That way there's a flow of progression, not a stagnation and a spellcasting weight club and a thought subset pattern of someone else will do it. The few who have stepped up into the prominent roles carry a heavy burden, requiring much sacrifice in their lives because too many won't do the step up. Mired in the little me syndrome, which in effect is a lazy-ass cop-out. Because what makes me or anybody else more important or capable than you? Ultimately, it comes down to what you value. Are you valued? Do you value yourself? What is real and what is not? So what is value? In the modern society, the term value is beyond corrupted and corruptible. There are so many examples in life to mention, but we'll just cover a few for this show. Home values has become a millstone around our necks to feed the greed elements within society. Which is why I had the idea for the TPC village, where the house prices are builder's cost plus 10%. And the price goes up or down depending on the inflation rate only. Not the deliberately engineered harvesting traps of energy called the boom and bust cycle that everyone is aware of, yet too few act on it. I warned people in my circle back in 2006 that home prices would drop 40%. And people in my circle laughed. Not for long they didn't. And at the time I had my house up for sale for $320,000. And I reduced it after 2 to 3 weeks to $285 and sold it the next day. I was happy. Friends called me stupid for throwing money away. But I'd only paid $172,000 for that home just 2 years earlier. So in essence, not only did I live in that home rent-free for 2 years, but walked away with a nice profit to be used for something else. But others in the circle wanted more and more money, and that's where the greed factor kicks in. And that greed factor cost them heavily. Less than 12 months later, that same home was $150,000 less than I sold mine for. And people in my circle were no longer laughing and got angry at me for jumping out at the right time. But I did tell them it would plunge 40%, only to find I was low in that estimation and it was near 60 to 70% drop. But that type of action, where I made money that time, there are other times when I lost much on home transactions, did and does not sit well with me. It's playing a lottery game with people's homes and lives, which is one of the 5 basics in life. Too few win and most lose, and pay a heavy cost in their lifestyles. And it's the cause of much illness, worry, and mental instability in people. A reduction of the self, and also plays heavily into the number of divorces as well, and the impacts it has on the children. And all in all, it's very destructive in so many ways. So why are we participating in that way where eventually we all lose? We're doing the bankers' greed program for them. And it ends up with people on the street in mobile homes, which I got a complaint about recently, stating I was denigrating people living in mobile homes. Wrong thinking. That is reacting to the headline again and not looking deeper into why that is a problem. I am denigrating the system that has forced so many into living in what is essentially a death trap. There's only one door. Day in, day out, mobile homes, or caravans as I know them, to me are 1 week vacation establishments, not permanent living, because that is all people can afford. That's the problem. It's the system that creates it. And one heavy gust of wind and there goes your home flying down the street. Seen enough of it in Florida. But one of the biggest lacks in real value is creativity. The world of arts, crafts and music in particular. Vast quantities of time placed within those disciplines, and yet so little in terms of monetary values of the hours put in to produce it. Unless, of course, you're in the so-called upper circle of people with too much money buying all kinds of shit wrapped up in a memetics word as fashion, which means to form or give shape to, or more indicatively, conforming to a pre-selected taste. This is an example of programming. Somebody else telling you this is fashionable, which is a fancy word for you must buy this item. And we will massively overcharge you for the value of this item. And yet so many fall for it is the sad aspect. Personally, the what is called high-end fashion wants me to do my MeWe GIF all day, personally. As fashion, like art, is predetermined by people with money but no sense, and yet we follow it. We have an array of talented artists within our own group, and yet if they all spent the next 10 years painting or drawing and then selling their life force energy of that work, it would generate considerably less than one of Van Gogh's crap paintings. Why is that? A lack of what is real value is what? Only a complete half-wit can look at a Van Gogh painting and think, wow, that is fantastic, I will bid $4 million for it. You know, I wonder whether he really lost his ear and it wasn't his eyes, because they're no better than some mildly talented 8th grade student could do, and less talented than some in our own group. But it's the branding. It only takes some engineered think tank group like the Council of Foreign Relations or the 300 Committee to create a brand. Tell people this is a must-have item or you're not cool or fashionable, over-promoting it, and it sells to a gullible public. A public trying to act all sophisticated and not being themselves. It's all in the words again, is it not? They create a brand and brand us with it. Just like the branding of the cattle, is it not? Reinforcing the "we are the chattel" meme. Is money value? It depends at which angle you come at that question, does it not? It has implied value, as without it you can't survive in most cases. So from that aspect, yes, it does. But it's not real money, is it? It doesn't pay off your debts, only discharges them. From other aspects, it is a control and class system. Have and have-nots. Creates greed, not need. And for the famous, it oozes out of their every pore, and then people get envious. Some then go into a life of crime to copy that lifestyle, because you won't get that lofty height working for a $10 to $15 an hour at McDonald's. Or the most common aspect is to go into massive amounts of debt to copy a lifestyle created by the branding people in magazines and adverts. But it has no value, does it? Ponder on this, and you personally win the lottery. And then you repeat what many other lottery winners' traits have done. You buy the big house, buy the vacation home, go on several vacations around the world, overindulge yourself in the must-have items that have been branded for you. Buy cars, boats, planes, whatever. And it's all great and living the high life. But what happens next? Likely you're not with the same partner or the same friends either, as you are mixing in so-called higher circles now, who are essentially vacuous people out of touch with reality. What that lottery win did was brought you was a world of fakery and illusion. Look at me, I'm rich, whilst ignoring there are many in the world who are suffering. Whilst the lottery winner, like the elite, gorges on everything and leaves scraps in their wake. Money is a poor exchange for what it really stands for. Your life force energy. An hour of your time is equal to an hour of anyone else's time. Who decides that cleaning the streets, toilets or offices is only worth a pittance? Yet sitting at a desk talking shit, acting important and clicking pens whilst abusing the secretary is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Well, I studied for this and got degrees. Ooh. And so I should earn more, they will say. My reply was, you were given shite to learn and followed it. Like doctors, they spent 7 years training, and yet not 1 minute is spent learning cures, which is the definition of their very job, to cure people or make people better, is it not? Not exactly with that training, is it? Your PhDs, degrees, certificates means jack if it doesn't provide some sort of benefit for the all. I have little to no degrees, certificates or other system pieces of paper. Does that make me unintelligent? So what is value? Well, people with loads of money are or rarely look happy. Why? Because after you've bought everything with pieces of paper, there is still key ingredients of life missing that money will never buy. Love, compassion, caring and sharing, or a life, or more importantly, time. Time is the value. All time is equal, and so subsequently all professions' time and value should be equal as well. Not always possible given the variety of factors, but something society should work on in the next 2 generations, as it means more will have an equal share. That is value. Hi and welcome back. Let's get into the next piece. As above, so below. As within, so without. The great mirror effect that can work both ways, but people in general only see it as one way. The mirror reflects back and the eye sees what the brain tells them. But our eyes are limited. A few percentage points of the spectrum. Our brains have had varying doses of MK Ultra. For most people, on a non-physical level. Some have endured it on the tortuous physical level. Both render the individual a controlled or controllable asset. Designed to follow, must obey, all very they live, as an increasing public use of technology ensnares more into the subtle MK Ultra program. Like I said, all people have endured MK Ultra in some form or another. To deny it is ignoring the problem, an all too common human trait. You watch TV, play video games, partake in various social media, the most damaging of which is Twitter, with a silent A. There is a reason they only allow you to post a certain number of characters. It is streamlining the narrative. So you operate in sound bites and headlines only, and don't delve deeper into the aspects of the narrative. Via television, controlling via the advertisement program. Adverts are strategically placed every 8 minutes or so because they have managed to reduce the average American's attention span down to 8 minutes now through TV programming. Video games are a massive problem. It is seeded with dark, malignant frequency music, if you can call it that. Dark subliminals that pulse into your brain, which is entrainment tactics and frequencies that disrupt the brain thinking pattern. It encourages competitive streaks and win at all costs. Riddled with violence and gory scenes where it's okay to run over people and shoot cops. Military games always include the latest boogeyman given to them by the system, but there is no boogeyman. There never was. Like Muslims, Iran, Russia, China, Cuba and North Korea. But these games are also connected to their AI network. And not only do they assess the strategies by each player, but more damaging is they are profiling each player registered on the network. Yet again, an example how we do their job for them. So what they do is they will set tests within the game, which player will shoot at all costs. How far individuals will go to win the game. Will they cheat? Cheating is an advantage to those running the data profiling, because if a person is willing to cheat, they are willing to do other things more nefarious to attain their goals. Will the player take out a key element with one single strike, or will the player destroy the whole village to take out the one person? The person who does the latter is of interest to rogue elements within the military, mercenary, agencies and security groups. and a subsequent targeting of that individual to be pushed into those live roles. This is how data profiling works. It's the same on social media. Do you think those life questions that pop up are for entertainment? No. Those that fill in those questionnaires like, are you an empath? How spiritual are you? What is your IQ? And people fill them all in. And it all goes into the database, whereby you are profiled into labels and categories. Do you like this food or that item? Where would you like to go on vacation? Would you buy this product or another one? It's all about setting you up for personal advertising, marketing. Many will say, well, I never thought of it that way. How could we know they were doing that? The answer becomes a question is, why didn't you? Because you didn't look behind the mirror or the hidden hand. You accepted their image presented when all of their images are false or misrepresentations. The key to understanding it is, if you think on it, break it all down, observe it, assess where they can weaponize it against us, because everything else they've done has been used as a weapon against us, harmed us, or tricked us. Remember, they are the image and the hidden hand. They created the problem and provided the solution. They create the boogeyman and the saviour. It's like hospitals. They say they are there to make us better, and then they give us poisons to consume. They give people cigarettes to smoke, then they tell you it's not good for you or your health. But we've already established they're not interested in our health. Otherwise, they would stop blocking genuine cures. They would stop putting shit in the food, water, or air. And clowns blocking cancer cure hospitals and retarded people supporting it. Our life is consumed by supporting and upholding the lie. We argue over politics, not policies. We argue over politicians and not their voting records or what they have achieved for the people. If you select people based on image and personality, you get in return faceless drones with no thought process and certainly no solutions on anything relative. So how do I or we correct it? You correct it by fixing you. And if all took that responsibility, life, politics, and finances change. And those with a mastery of the self will see through all their illusions. So how does that work, and how can it be fixed? When you look in the mirror, you see one image, which is you. You are conditioned to see just you. You miss the shadows of the self, the ones not integrated into you, as you couldn't face that shadow aspect of you. But as an observer of you looking at you, you will see the shadows. If you go to the other side of the mirror, you will see you looking back at you. You have now seen through the illusion. But you can't look through the back of a mirror, many will say, because your mind is entrained to think that way. The brain is software and programmable, but you've forgotten you are the programmer. Once you are the master of you with your imagination. You rewrite the program. But first, you have to stop the limitation program. I can't do this. You can't do that. Says who? Teachers, science, media, psychologists. And since when were they the bastions of delivering the truth, knowledge, and empowerment? Life is the mirror. When you add more mirrors, is there not more versions of you? But I thought you were just one. What is real and what is the illusion? Is it not the case everything is inverted in life the same as the mirror? Life today is about things being external when all is internal. On the external, the focus of most people is the I and not the we. This leads to selfish agendas. Life is all about me and others don't matter. I'm all right, Jack. The endless world of comparison and competition that has damaged us, so many of us. So on the external, we are attempting to pull back the I and focus on the we, which is not an easy task, as many of you have found out. It is not an easy program to break. But then we have the inversion on the internal aspects, as within, so without. Internally, we are programmed to be the we and not the I, which is the reverse or the mirror of the external traits. So what is the we internal he is talking about, many will ask? The we is in the brain, the two dueling hemispheres. One says, I want to do this. The other side says, come on, you're too old, too weak, you can't learn this, you can't do that. How many of you have said, I would love to do this? And then the excuses crop up in your brain of why you can't. I would love to go to a paradise beach, but the kids, the school, the time off work, the money, and the same applies to the projects many of you are working on. I can't take part in this project because blah, blah, blah. That is the limitation program installed into your brain, and shutting it off is the key. So internally, many face the problem of the dueling hemispheres, which is the we. Combining them, it becomes the I. The I internally, when mastered, makes the we externally far easier. Once you have mastered the hemispheres, the next stage of the trinity within the head is to merge it with the third eye, the single unseen eye that sees more than the two visual eyes. Once that stage is complete, the next stage, providing the throat chakra is not blocked, which is a problem for many, which is why I did the Evening with Thomas shows, to allow people to open their throat chakras, because many of us have been stifled from speaking because of I was going to say something else then. Close friends and family being ignorant, shall we say. and it blocks the throat chakra. So if the throat chakra is not blocked, the next stage is the cord to the heart. This is where your abilities kick in, as operating from there opens many doors, physical and non-physical. More senses than our basic limiting 5 senses. And the real definition of the warrior with the sword manifests. The 2 brain hemispheres are the 2 side handles. The third eye is the handle. The cord to the heart is the blade. The blade, like the mirror, is double-edged. Use it wisely and it will serve you. Use unwisely and it will cut you. That requires responsibility. Many don't like responsibility, and why so few achieve their own mastery. How can you master yourself when you won't take responsibility? You can't. And one of the problems is people are all too content to let others do things for them. And that means if things go wrong, they have somebody else to blame. And that is why so many people rely on the government. But governments fail because the people didn't take responsibility. Not because of politicians, but because you are responsible having selected them to make them accountable. The people are responsible for the plight of the country and the government, and we have neglected it to allow somebody else to take the blame. People have become so frightened of failure that it prevents them becoming who they should be or what they want to do. Failure is an opportunity to see where you went wrong. Failure brings learning lessons, the same as mistakes. And as the Styx song said, remember, a winner is a loser who got back up and gave it one more try. It's true. So the key to mastery of the self is internally the we must become the I. Externally, the I must become the we. But externally only truly becomes fully possible with the internal mastered. Otherwise, it's all an illusion of what you believe you are doing, not actually what you are doing. The difference between service to others and service to self. And a comment from one of the members this week. The point was that caretakers always give and have trouble receiving, thereby creating an imbalance in the field. And I agree with that statement. But that is the balance also. Too many have to overgive because there are too many takers. People often state that Kim and I have too much to do and give, but there are reasons for that in these roles. The key is there's a lot of that in society also. The balance between the givers and the takers is very wide currently, and it needs to be addressed going forward. A message to all listeners and members is to recognise the tools you already have. Other tools given that might not have been accessed by you yet, they will be when you are ready. Focus less on what you haven't got or done, and remember what you have got and achieved. Having goals in life are great learning tools and methods of pushing beyond your own boundaries. But remember, the goals change along the way. Other people may cross your path and their goals can sometimes hamper your own, or may enhance your own. So this requires you being flexible. When THI shows are combined into one, you then realize you have everything you need to push forward for the self and also to aid others. The key to progression is that students go beyond the teacher on each generation. That then provides the progression flow into our future as a species. Next piece. What is human? A strange question to ask under normal circumstances, but can it or has it been defined? And what have we done to define it? With the varying cultures, all of which was created for us, all of them in some way are exclusive, not inclusive, riddled with errant ways, masks, false history and false present, each culture presented with an image. None are free, and all conform to some ancient book or ritual passed down by the dark forces. I've covered most cultures and peoples around the world and not put them in good light as a whole. Why? Do I really have to answer that question? You can all see why. But many refuse to face the reality. A world riddled in poverty. A world where the many don't have the basics in life. Many people labelled as savages or third world without understanding the connotations of what's being said. The Western world riddled in greed, overindulgence and falsehoods. And if you want to see real savages, look at social media, particularly in the West. People riddled with insecurity, bitterness, sniping at each other, inflammatory comments or posts designed to get them likes or comments, laden with drama, all with the intent of projecting their own failures onto other people, be it friends, family, social media friends, the government, the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminati, the Order, plus some who blame off-world. And that's the top and bottom line of it. Truth becomes a byword to the low self-esteem, insecure, and vessels riddled with malignant venom of their own making. Their lives are shit, dark, and devoid of humanity because the truth hurts them so much. Because what comes with truth is personal responsibility, which is a no-no for far too many, whether awake or asleep. People who are intent on making others accountable and yet neglect their own accountability or being accountable as well. Social media's riddled with that. Most people walk past or step over the homeless in the street because they're seen as lesser people. But they're no different to you or I. But with the comparative and competitive mindset, they are seen as lesser people, which is no different to the working class frowning on people on benefits, no different to the middle class frowning on the working class, no different to the upper class frowning on the middle class. No different of the elites frowning on the upper class, no different for the order, frowning on all the elite families, and no different to the former trustee frowning on us all. Nobody told us to do that. We just did it. How many people in the world genuinely care that 900,000 children go missing permanently in America each year, or 20 to 30,000 per year in the UK, or 49,000 children die each day? 1.3 billion with no electricity, 1 billion with no clean water, over 3 billion don't have a decent home. Yes, our members have heard all about it, but did your life change because of it? Did it cause you to become more grateful of what you have, not what you haven't? The People's Club sent a donations package of food basics, medicine and child essentials to a small village in Venezuela in late 2018, after their country was ransacked by the same clowns running and ruining this country. It was a small gesture. It didn't require much funding and was a godsend to that village. And it proved much can be done with little. And yet people feel you need a lot to do much. That's the mindset. And it has to change. You have lawyers charging $200 to $300 an hour to read or write. People charging thousands of dollars for consultations and fake presentations. And someone charging $75,000 for that line of work recently. That's 3 years' pay for the average service worker in this country. And yet $75,000 can feed a whole village for a year in most cases. It's all about perspective. Examples in New Age style social media people presenting themselves as spiritualists and then charging $200 to $400 to hear one line of Kumbaya bullshit after another. It beggars belief. Goddess this, angel that, star seeds like they're the only ones who came from the stars. Newsflash, we all did. The arrogance is astounding. We had millions of love and light people in America in the 1960s. Did the world become a better place? No. We have billions extolling the virtue and value of the church, religion and God, all praying for salvation. Has the world changed with that program? No. It has turned this planet into a war zone. So neither of those programs worked to bring a better world. Why? Because it was all fake, is why. Only those in denial would repeat those programs and expect them to work. There are many still asking for a 2,000-year-old dead man to become a zombie and return to save them. It's madness. Ignoring the fact, why would he want to come back? Humanity ignored him and left him to die 2,000 years ago. Is that harsh? Yes, but it's the truth. The people never saved him then. What chance would he have now with a baying mob of internet warriors who believe everything except when it comes to the truth? You know, I could give and spend a whole show on what is wrong and how we are all responsible for that wrong. And yes, many will point out it is the government, the agencies, the Illuminati have done all this to us. But that is the lie, or at best partially true. We are them and they are us. But reality bites, as most was done by us, due to a lack of care for our fellow men, women and children. And failing to address that leads to what we have now, which is a free-for-all in chaos, confusion, anger, bitterness, envy, and riddled in the worst malignancy of humanity, the self. What is human? Do you know? What lies beyond our own self-entitled bubble world? Do you see? Do you feel? Do you sense? Do you have real empathy? And the kicker, do you care? Words often lie. Words have spells. Most of us are oblivious to, but the devious amongst us. But actions don't. And in this current time space vibration, those lies, hidden agendas, masks, projections don't work too well. All of it being exposed on a massive scale, on every single level. And what you see is very ugly, no matter where you're from. The reason being is most people on this planet are fake. Yes, many pretend to be all love and light, throwing out love emojis and memes, but inside they're far from it. And if that wasn't a correct assessment, the world would be a much better place. It's not. All can see that now, whether awake or not. The letter addressed to the top order on this planet was stark in its condemnation of their inability to follow a simple plan and look after the treasures that belong to us all. But if you paid attention and listened closely, that letter could well have been addressed to us as well. You see, we're no different on every level of society, in every class of society, in every culture of society, in every religion, colour or gender of society. The letter was really no different to the Cassandra letter addressed to the alt media. None whatsoever. Now we can all ignore that, and humanity is adept at ignoring things both externally and internally, or face reality and the brutal truth. We have failed each other as a collective of what it means to be human, me included. Once a problem is established and the finger pointing away from you stops, then it becomes about solutions to fixing the problem. But there is hope as well, as many are now starting to act in better ways, using their energy to improve things for the all, not just the self. In our own group, there are many wonderful examples of people accepting their own responsibility and striving to improve themselves and working towards helping others. I won't list them, as we still have a comparative mindset people within and outside the group crying about favouritism. The problem is not that they are favourites. The problem is you and your own unaddressed insecurity. Fix it. It's destroying you, not me or anyone else. And that is your responsibility. Many people have helped me to do this job more efficiently than I was previously. And for the people who gave $1 a month to some, and some who gave $1,000 a month, I'm grateful to you all, including to those who couldn't give in terms of financial support. They gave in their energy of supporting me and us in bringing about a change. And there has to be a near 180 change on many levels, as all the previous model has failed on all levels. We have some people who complain about me, and yet none of them would do this work for 5 minutes. They know that deep down. But the comparative mind runs through many people's vessels like a malignant cancer cell. And the gist of those who complain is they wish they had the vision, balls and gumption to do what I do, but never had the drive or the vision to do so. And so rather than trying to elevate themselves into a similar position, they take the easy way out and try to drag their target of envy down to their level. And this is why, as a collective, we all fail. Do people not see that? Dragging each other down means we all end up the bottom. And like war, an eye for an eye, and we all end up blind. How is that progressive? Is that being human? This show is about harsh truth reality, and it is harsh. It has to be, because we've all gorged ourselves on bullshittery all our lives. This show is about us elevating us all. And yes, I know many of our members have complained to me that I don't give myself enough credit. And I see that. But that is then putting me on a pedestal. The drive for me is we're all on the pedestal, not just the one. The one is replicating the old system. The old system created for us has failed. But it was created for us because we didn't take responsibility to create a system for ourselves. And if people think playing the old movie over and over again like Groundhog Day will bring change, you're as deluded as they come. Stuck in the programs and programming of non-creative thinking, and let's all play bots of copy and repeat. Is that being human? Education, government, health, charity, finance, war and military, class structure, culture, religion and business. It's all failed. And failed spectacularly. Not as spectacular as what was known as the order, but nonetheless, it all failed. To the few who really know what has gone on this planet, we knew it was all designed to fail is why. Are we really that stupid to keep repeating failed old models? Or do we analyse each section and come up with solutions of a better way for the first time in 110,000 years? At least. That is the task we all face going forward. Our past legacy is not pretty, and people can carry on projecting at others all they like. The reality is they're projecting at themselves. And this is why you're seeing so many in public, alt media and social media, accusing others of doing what they have done or participated within themselves. Oops. And their own lack of humanity prevents them from seeing what the observer sees. The problem is you. But sadly, you are not alone in that thinking, and it is a pandemic within society. Cassandra said, "We have told you the truth." If you're a new member, Cassandra was one of the parents. And even the few amongst you relaying the truth are dismissed and ridiculed to a point of exasperation, she said. That is a fact. For people who believe in Jesus, what did his followers or the people do to protect him? Nothing. Radomir or Mary Magdalene? Again, nothing, but a very few who tried to protect them. Anna in the 1500s, again, the people did nothing, except they went one step further and stood and cheered in the square as she was being burnt alive by the Catholic Church for daring to teach the truth to the people. All people who stand up for the real truth get treated the same way. Denigrated, abused, threats of violence, their lives destroyed trying to help the all. And that is the price people pay for trying to help you. Kim and I have gone to great lengths to help the all, and that is what we got in return for doing so. Shane Laruna, Randy Morgans, Alan James as well. Think about that for a while. Because you can't blame any other organisation for doing that. It's us. Humanity as a collective. Who did and does that? And what is worse is your friends and family do the most damage. Is that being human? Hi all and welcome back. I got up off my knees and stood face to face with myself. In that line is the key line to that song. And this is what this show is about. We've all made mistakes. We've all done wrong things. We've all could have done certain things better. But are you going to ignore them or address it? So, what is human? Have we defined it? Like, what will life be like in a better world? Too few have defined it. What does it mean? What does it entail? How will we go about it? How will we achieve it? Do we want to achieve it? Is there a plan? We have a plan, but do you have a plan? Or are you too content for others to make a plan for you? Which is exactly what transpired in the old model, is it not? Where is your plan? Where are your solutions? Why is there a propensity to only bring problems or faults with others? Pushing others into making a plan for you is dissolving your own responsibility. So when the few only back the plan and it fails, people then can point fingers at those who failed. But that is the illusion. A plan fails as the all didn't participate in it to make it work. If the all participate in it, any plan has a better chance of prevailing. But people fight over being the leader, their ideas are better than yours, or they want to control the plan and the narrative. And for an example of that, look at the THI state and country groups early on. I'm glad to see some of them have sorted it out. Too busy arguing over pedantics and control and self-serving agendas rather than coming to a common consensus and solutions. We can't deny that. It happened. And awake can be no better than the sleepers in that mode. Why? Because the you hasn't addressed the self problems. That's why it happens. Low self-esteem or low confidence, ego imbalance, and the comparative competitive mindsets are the ills in us all. And these are the reasons behind our collective continuing failure in life. And we are all responsible for that change. Because if you don't, and you go into a group setting, you then triggers others to jump back into the old model way. Then it becomes a loop, a hamster wheel of repeated and repetitive failure mindsets. So the change is you. You are the change. It's symbiotic and infectious. Like attracts like. You can attract negative, which is largely the subset of humanity now, or you can be and attract positive, higher vibrational energies. The choice is yours. Are you going to create change and be different, or say you will be creating change but run the same failed old model program? Because there were too few who are aware of what is going on within them or around them, they have become a vacant, empty shell, vessels whose programs ran out and failed. And there's no one to tell them what to do now. So panic ensues. This is what we're seeing at the top end, the so-called top end anyway. There's no leaders. They're all followers. And this is what we are all witnessing currently. They're like a child on their first time on a bicycle waiting for a parent to push them along. Thrashing about with no direction, life whizzing past them, the majority of which they are oblivious to. But look around you. Nothing works anymore. People are going nuts. Behaviour and demeanours get more bizarre by the day. Hey, let's all eat babies to save the planet, or eat humans to stop climate change. That sounds like an off-world restaurant to me, that. But they warned you all of that back in 1991, did they not? With the movie Silence of the Lambs. You didn't think that was about entertainment, did you? Because it wasn't. They were putting it in your face. Like I said before, fact is fiction and fiction is fact. And I hope more people understand that concept now. Most people just thought that woman saying, let's eat babies, was a joke. It's not. It's implanting the seed in people's psyche. From eating babies to sexually molesting children at any age, they are programming you to accept it. And as they know, most people ignore everything they do. And that is how and why they get away with it. The few that challenge it then becomes targets by internet warriors, some of which are paid to do so or coerced into doing so by the fact the authorities have dirt on them and are using them as leverage against them. Who are you? And some will reply, I am me. But what is you? have you defined what is you? Are you the body, the spirit, the soul, the mind? You do realise a body without a spirit dies in organic humans. It is the primary cause of death in sleep. The spirit didn't make it out of the astral level, was attacked and consumed by the energy harvesters contained within that realm. Science won't tell you that. Neither will your doctor, psychologist, or hospital. They just say it's unexplainable. It's not. It's clearly explainable. But who wants to hear it? A new chapter of what it means to be human will have to be defined and rewritten going forward. All cultures are culpable and responsible for the current mess. Don't believe me? Well, here's a small reminder based on the collective, I want to make that clear, not the individuals. White people, based in greed, all about the self, walk around with fake avatars of the real person, have a serious alcohol abuse problem, have numbers of white people within elite circles with vast amounts of wealth, none of which is shared amongst their own people. Your history is false. Blacks in America and Africa, lots of ill-gotten gains from drugs, gun running, prostitution, none of which is shared within your own community. Creating ghettos, high levels of violence and deaths between your own people, trading your own people as slaves long before the Europeans arrived. Your history is false. Tribal groups, again involved in clandestine money-making schemes, plus oil and casinos, and yet none of it's given to your own people. Forced into living in shacks and ramshackle reservations, forcing their own people to work as slave labour on the said reservations, who are stated to be in tune with Mother Nature, and yet drill right through her to harvest bacteria poop for monetary gain. That's not being in tune with nature. Stated to be in touch with the spirit world and promote psychedelic concoctions that put people in grave danger because they are ignorant of the facts. Fake shamans with less than a year's training, all designed to make money, none of which is shared with their own people. Your history is false also. India and that region of Asia, you run a caste system even to this day that was blamed on the Dutch and the British, and yet you still persist with it 72 years later. Is it the Raj or the Ra? 8 of the top 10 richest people in the world are Indian, yet do they share it amongst their own people like all other groups? The answer is no. Forced marriages, forcing children into marriages, making out Buddha and Hinduism is based on your culture. It's not. It's fake. The Rus tried to teach you a better way. You failed. 1/3 of the world's hunger problem is in India alone, and 7,000 die each day in India from hunger. So much for Buddha and Shiva and Vishnu teachings being about love and consideration. It's bollocks. And your history is false. Australia and New Zealand, the group who sold humanity out 16,500 years ago for weapons against the local tribe. The Aboriginal group are also corrupt, gaining back their lands only to sell it on to the same greedy snake oil developers, creating oil fields, none of which the proceeds goes back to their own people. Your history is false also. Hispanic peoples, like the black population, involved in clandestine money programs against your own people, using them as slaves and patsies involved in drugs, laundering, trafficking, child sex-related programs, and in Central America, child ritual programs. And none of the proceeds goes back to their own people. Your history is false also. The Middle East, riddled with the same criminality as above, with added in religious furtherism, and you have a cocktail of violence, death and destruction. Your history is more fake than the rest combined. Vast quantities of minerals, treasures and artefacts, the proceeds of which are not shared with your own people either. You can't even share the land. Chinese and Japan, again riddled with gang warfare, generating vast profits off their own people, again not shared amongst their own people. Even in Hong Kong, there's been an incredible surge of wealth in recent years. Did they share it? No. Pol Pot, Chairman Mao and many other leaders in that country murdered millions of Chinese over a difference of opinion. Yakuza and triad gangs assembled vast wealth. Again, none of it shared with their own people. The world has 838 million people undernourished, and yet we have 1.6 billion people overweight, of which 742 million are obese. That in and of itself shows a lack of sharing. Need, not greed, is the answer. People say there's no money, and yet so far this year, which increased, as this was written in October, $316 billion has been spent on illegal drugs alone. It's all about priorities, isn't it? The role of the archetype mother is to care for her children. Yet up till October of last year, there have been 33.5 million abortions globally. Now you can make excuses for a portion of those aborted births, but nowhere near that figure. By October, 2 million had died of alcohol abuse. Can afford to buy alcohol, which is not a basic in life, but not feed the millions starving around the world. And these are all a classic example of greed, not need, of looking after the self and not the all. We have millions poured into the UN and charities globally. In 2017, it was estimated that $402 billion was given to charity for various causes, from children to care, health, malnutrition, animal welfare, etc. And yet not one statistic has shown any improvements in any of those fields. Not one. We had Live Aid and vast billions given to Africa in the 1980s. Did it improve one iota? Are all the people fed? No. It was just another slush fund for greedy, self-serving bastards. That's what that was. Charity CEOs on $400,000 plus per year. Those people are not interested in charity. They're only serving themselves. As an example, my salary for when the People's Club funding comes out was set at $50,000 a year. Like I said, need, not greed. So we asked the question again, what is human? Is this section a fair example of being human? Many will dismiss it, a common theme. Many will react badly to it, again a common theme. And the few will look at themselves and go, you know what? All of that is the truth. And we have failed each other badly. In the old system way, the people had one role in a recurring plot put forward by the policymakers. They repeated it over and over again. And like bots, we copied and repeated it over and over again. By being lazy-minded and lacking critical thinking. That one role was in reaction. That was our role, to provide the reaction. The order had a new solution. So they then created the problem to push forward their solution, and we the people provided the reaction time and time again. They wanted war in the Middle East. They fed the Western world a story. People reacted to it, and off to war we went. To those that disagreed with it at the time, the next line does not apply to you. But those that went along with it, believe in fake news, you are partially responsible for the deaths of 1.8 million Iraqis alone, along with 6,500 Americans. That's not fair, people will cry. It was the politicians. But you voted for them. You left them to make decisions for you. So you are just as responsible for the actions of your country as anybody else. And that is what being sovereign is all about. Going forward, we must all see the problems, generate the right reaction of a goal to fix it, then come up with the solutions to solve the problem. All people, not just politicians. Essentially, they are the equivalent of the gladiator arenas in Rome. We are the spectators, and you throw people into the lines to get savaged. Sitting there cheering as they're getting ripped to shreds, not realising the reason those people are getting shredded is because the people in the gallery seats didn't take responsibility. It's always someone else's problem. Well, actually, it's not. It's our problem. All of us. Millionaires and billionaires, is that being human? Vulture capitalism, is that being human? Child traffickers, is that being human? Military awarding badges for killing people, is that being human? Spending more on military and weapons than food or health, is that being human? Religious people confessing to be all holy and God-loving, and yet rape their communities, trafficking children, mentally, physically and sexually abusing them. Is that being human? Creating wars of my God is better than your God. Is that being human? Many will blame the ancestors, and there's some justification in that narrative, but we, this last 2 generations, have all been in the timeline of the greatest jump in knowledge this current civilization has seen via the internet, and what has changed from a collective standpoint. Ignorance back then was easily controlled and passed on to the masses. Ignorance now is a choice that all of you bear responsibility for. Are you part of the problem or part of the solution? Will you ask or demand change, or will you be the change? Will you be mad in fear and victimhood programs or take responsibility and shine like a beacon. So what is human? Our record outlined is not too pretty a picture, is it? In the fake book written by the controlling elites, not God or source, it states, let us make or create man in our image. Now, I've gone on record to state that book was written by the Anunnaki groups and their offspring. They all carried the mark of the Nephilim. From Melchizedek to Genghis Khan, Cohen, to the Indian gods to Noah, as did Noah's offspring Shem and Ham. All, it was said, they had a coat of armour when born, described as scaly skin. And no, it wasn't eczema or psoriasis, it was reptile skin. Oops. Many have interpreted the term, let us create man in our image. Too few ask, who is us and what is our? I thought it was said, God made us. Is there more than one? And many took that statement as a sign that they made man literally. They didn't. They, the gods, fake ones, set about turning man into their image via mind control and low vibrational frequency traits. Divide and conquer and hierarchy all came from them. Now they are gone and can no longer interfere on the levels previously, although there will always be some who wish to continue that program. We have enough humans who are psychotic as their leaders were. What are we going to do to create man in a new image and new light? We have an opportunity to forge our own path for the first time in history without interference. Do we like our current image? Labelled as savages by some, labelled as low intelligence by others. Is that what we wish to be labelled by? Or will the collective stand up and finally take some responsibility of the mess this world is in? Come together and forge a better path. Whilst they created the image, like bots who followed it, when a little circumspect reflection of yourself and the world around you could easily have changed this abomination a long time ago. THI has been on a journey of correcting the past ills and exposing the hidden world too few could see and even less believed. What made us different is we pointed the fingers not just at those who hurt, controlled or damaged us, but at the mirror and back towards us and what our role was in it as well. You cannot create solutions by only looking at half the problem, and this is why the world is in a mess. Too few see the bigger picture, too few realise there is a bigger picture, never mind see it. Too few critical think or analyse, and the ones that do analyse largely do for negative purposes. Too many are reminiscent of the children in kindergarten class, listening to the teacher to read a book to them, or worse, George Bush Jr. All just swallowed it up and regurgitated it ad nauseum. Only the few asked the questions of its validity or whether it was true or not. And adults are no different to those children. The children at least had an excuse. They were learning the world and were relatively new to it. Adults don't have that excuse. You chose to be a bot, listen and repeat. That's not being human. That is a machine. One thing that pleases me most is how many of you in the group have embraced the message and gone on to making better changes in your life and those around you. It's arduous, I know, that more than you all. Truth comes at a very heavy cost to those delivering it on this planet. And the least anyone can do is support those who are. Yet we see several examples of those mired their own shit and then projecting it onto others. Do we want a world that throws shit everywhere and creates a massive stink? Or do we take responsibility for ourselves and create a much cleaner world where the stink is in the minority, not the majority? Many of you took up the mantle and changed yourselves, your outlook and your own image. And some have gone on to helping others to do the same. This group has taken many members off pharma drugs, other drugs, illegal or otherwise, alcohol abuse, victimhood programs, religious programs, cycle of abuse programs, and we've made giant strides in this arena. Many have written to me and said their whole lives have changed since being in THI. People from all over the world who have never even met me or most of the members, all stating the show turned their life around. And yet we've all been targeted for doing so. Why is that? Is that being human? They target you not because you are weak, but because you are strong. Never forget that. They target you not because you have external strength, but inner strength. And never forget that. They target you not because you are stupid, but you have more intelligence than them. Never forget that. They target you not because you don't care, but because you do. Never forget that. They target you not because you have a lower vibration, but a higher vibration. And never forget that either. Remember where you were head and heart-wise before THI. And see and feel your own development. No low vibration person can take that away from you. Never forget that either. I brought forward a vision of how to be, but you have delivered it. And the low vibrationals can't take that away from you either. They are lost, stuck in their own world, and their program has run out. And they have no idea what to do. So they revert back to type of those who created the image for them. Oops. The hue in human has three meanings. Higher universal. The Sumerian Anunnaki term hue means serpent. In Sanskrit it means dragon. Which is it to be, humanity? Dragon Man. We had an example of the dragon guardians failing in part 4. Serpent Man, worshipped by the Catholic Church, or higher universal man. The choice now rests solely in all your hands, which of the three you become. No masks to hide behind. Little to no cabal. No Illuminati. No ETs or NT groups. No global martial law. And another group decimated recently. The Order of the Black Sun. They still have their minions who follow a failed program. Cloaked technologies destroyed or revealed. No psychotic AI, no simulation, no matrix. And the top order on this planet decimated down to a relatively few psychopaths. Only fear, threats, and a lack of responsibility keeps the illusion that the old order is still in control. The reality is they are not. That will become a lot more clearer this year. So there are no more excuses really, or very few. You are on your own to create and be creative. Be free or stay in your own enslavement. Are you mind or heart-based, real or fake? It's all out in the open now. And the frequencies are telling the real truth. Not the lies you spew out or have been fed and absorbed as fact. Disclosure, people cry. You've already had it. That is why you know of it. The question is now, what next? Do we carry on not caring? Carry on not sharing? Carry on in their image or create our own image? That image we create needs to be on almost 180 turn on what went on before. That failed. We failed. Now is the time for a new way, a different image, a progressive change, and a drive to take this world of children into a progressive, flourishing, adult-based species. The whispers in your ear are getting stronger as the reconnection to your higher self bonds closer and closer. But will you listen? Are you waiting for the event? Or have you realized yet you are the event? So we end this piece with what we started with. What is human? Now with a blank slate, it and we becomes what you make it. Choose wisely and for source sake, learn to be nice to the all. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. The gist of that last piece, what is human? No matter which level, label, box, country, awake or asleep, wealthy or not, status you reside in, all levels really have no discernible difference from anyone else. In terms of actions, at the very least. That particular piece disturbed some listeners when it was first put out and garnered a negative reaction. Some felt the show wasn't upbeat or positive enough and was declared a rather negative piece. But this show is not entertainment. It's real life, reality, and it will not be sugar-coated because some won't face reality. We all have to face reality. No one can genuinely dispute or put up a counter-argument against that piece, because deep down you all know it's true. And once we all accept that fact, which then recognizes we have a problem, currently that problem is always someone else's issue. But if we realize we have a problem, then we can come up with the solutions to correcting the problem. You can't fix a problem fully with parts missing. It was only the cabal or the elites or the order or the ETs. No, it was all of us. There's a common theme that has been used by us all in the alt media to put up the control system as a pyramid with various entities on the upper levels. And we, the people, are the foundation of the pyramid, which is largely true. You see, they needed us as much as we needed them. But when you factor in that people from all levels up to the top are all by and large came from the same foundation, which is not something some people want to hear. It's far easier to say that they came from a privileged or a different background or a wealthy background. But I wouldn't call being born a Rothschild a privilege. It's more like a burden, as Shane will tell you. But let's look at the pyramid from a different angle or perspective, like looking in the mirror as the third person. You place the pyramid on the floor and then add a piece of wood that is equal on both sides on the top of the pyramid. That pyramid is now the fulcrum of a seesaw. We, the people, on one end, the control system on the other. Which way does the seesaw go? Well, currently, although not as much now, the seesaw end with the people on is tipped on the floor, which puts the control system above us. So how is that corrected? It's corrected by those at the bottom lifting themselves up and rising the plank towards the fulcrum, the pyramid, which is exactly how the pyramid was created. And the key then is to climb up with a different perspective and ideals, or down and join them and become the system, or change you. Become the system or change you and become part of something bigger than yourself. All of us have been lied to. All lie to each other. All or most of the key aspects of his story is false. And we either see in the mirror or follow the illusion in the mirror, the latter of which has failed repeatedly. Some are all too content to focus on the reflection and the subsequent deflection, not introspection, which is what is required by the all. And for the hard of hearing, that includes me. Something else I got accused of in that particular week. Shadow and inner work cannot be fixed by fake online spiritualists or new age bullshitters. They cannot do that for you. Only you can do that. Doing it for you is following the illusion path, and hundreds of dollars later you're back where you started, just like a loop. It's a tough process, but it brings many rewards that far outweigh pieces of paper. There is a beginning to it. Most refuse to face the beginning initially, but there is no end. Do your waves inside you flow fairly evenly or slosh about wildly. And that is where the 45-55 comes in nicely. That is a must for this year. The head in the sand approach did and does not work. Otherwise, we would have a much better world. The message was, we are no different to anyone else. And we all have to step up, awake, asleep, minions and families. We were taken on a one-way ride to a point of no return. Too few are fully yet to grasp that. 2012 was our cut-off, the end of humanity. And many worked hard to get us a final chance to be different. But you can only do that by being honest with the self. And you can only be honest and also humble within the self if the self is at peace and levels of mastery attained. Issues will always crop up, and those issues are beacons to show you where you still need more work. People ask for sovereignty, again without defining what it is or entails. Sovereignty is about holding your own space, not allowing others to run it for you, which means personal responsibility. And this was a comment from one of the members back in October, I think. Let it go is a term we use frequently in my practice. Open the mind to all possibility. Mind is infinite. There are no limitations, only those self-imposed. That is at the essence of Aikido. Let go. Become one with source. Have vision. Become the kind of human you choose to be and build the life and society you choose, based on a foundation of love, and protect all creation, helping all things grow and develop. And the writer says, I've got my work cut out. We all do, me included. The key is to put that practice to work and gain mastery. It always disturbs me that they call the doctor's work centre a practice. A practice is for the non-learned, is it not? It's all in the words. We're all still learning. That is called progression. The old learning ways was stagnation. It was designed that way. And if you stagnate on linear time, you go backwards. On vertical time, you stand still. But most people currently operate on linear time. But like the seesaw analogy, the key is to climb, not stagnate. Very soon, in fact, in some aspects, it's already underway. Humanity will face their very own D-Day and their version of the Dunkirk landing, where we come out of the sea, having been declared dead at sea under the maritime law. The sea, with all its fury, surrounded by a mist of fog, so no one could even see the beach, never mind landing on it. That fog is now clearing rapidly for many, and the beach is in sight and reach. Once you've achieved that and are now out of the sea and away from all the sloshing about of the waves, endlessly tossing and turning, frothing at the beach edge, undecided whether to land or go back into the sea of illusion with the masses, you'll run a new gauntlet up the beach. Will you avoid that by putting your head in the sand and subsequently be washed out to sea again, or plough through regardless, but running up the steep and hazardous beach with people firing at you, not with guns or bombs, but with words, lies and projections thrown at you, all designed to pull you back into the swirling froth mass of the sea. The Holy Sea. And that's not a joke either. Once at the top of the beach, or the fulcrum again, you then have another test. Do you sail down the other side and join the hidden hand of darkness in the pit? Or do you become the non-hidden hand and reach out and pull others out of the sea of discontent? Some will say you can't reach the people from the top of the beach. I will say not on your own you can't. But if you use your imagination, you will join hands with others on the beach and form a chain to reach your goal. Whether you are on the land or the sea, we are creating a new blueprint of what it means to be human. All other attempts failed because they repeated the same process and program that was designed to fail. When the we becomes the I on the internal and the I becomes the we on the external, the path of the sword is forged. We all fell for the sickness, and that is why the word is called illusion, because we all became sick on it. What is life? Similar to what is human. And again, we've not defined it too well. Life is living, experiencing good, bad, or indifferent. Life is learning from the light and the dark. In fact, our best lessons and learning mode come from the dark by observance. I said that pointedly for a reason, which is far better than participating in it. But this life here is not about living. As each generation passes, it has become more and more about surviving and existing than living, has it not? So much so now that surviving day to day for well over half the planet is their very existence, whilst the select few gorge on life and consume everything, like it's all of a sudden going to run out someday soon. The classic think tank tactic of create or announce scarcity where there is none. Remember, according to those clowns and scaremongers in the 1980s and 1990s, we were going to run out of oil before the turn of the last century. All lies. Oil, which is bacteria poop, is abiotic, which means it replenishes itself. Oops. For the former, that is not living. It is an abomination of life. And the more people recognise that fact, the better. Because you have the 5 basics does not mean I'm all right, Jack, and not care for the rest of society. That is no different to being a member of the elite in its base form. Even those who do have the 5 basics in life do not see that they live like kings compared to many on this planet. There is always the desire, not need, to have more. and Western society is riddled with entitlement in comparison to many other parts of the world. But it's funny how people will compare everything else in life, clothes, homes, handbags, shoes, cars, looks, and even how many likes or friends they get on social media. But when comparisons are made with anything else involving the life or lack of life of others, the comparative mind suddenly switches off into ignore mode. And that has to stop if we are to progress as a species. So switch it back on. Turn off the ignore and absorb these figures, because this is the type of work we're going to have to be doing going forward. And comprehend what these figures are saying about us as a collective. 838 million don't have enough food. That's 1 in every 9 people. 785 million don't have clean water. 2 billion people don't even have a toilet. 2 billion. 1.3 billion have no electricity. Adequate homes. The last time the global authority supposedly tasked to deal with this, yes, you, the UN, and bothered to check it, was in 2005. And 1.6 billion people didn't have an adequate home. Suffice to say, that figure is much higher now. 58 million children have no education. 876 million adults are illiterate, and 4.4 billion don't have access to the internet. Read and weep that you are not in those categories. And that is not said to make you feel guilty of what you have, but it is said to you to kickstart you into concern and caring about what others don't have. They are the priority. The haves and the have-nots leads to an increase in crime. And the propensity is to frown on people who commit crimes. But if a mother steals food or clothing from a shop to feed or clothe her children because she has no means to provide for them, is that a crime by her? No. It's a crime by the system that created that situation and the public not caring enough. You go behind the narrative. Woman steals food and people react to it. Throw her in jail, fine her, etc. No. What is the situation that caused her to do that? Critical thinking. Future thinking. Life is riddled in a fear-based cacophony of noise, and we have various insurances-based expenditures for fear of losing what we insure against. College funds is a form of fear-based insurance that our kids don't fail in life. But kids don't fail in life because they have no pieces of paper called certificates, degrees, doctorates or PhDs. They fail in life if you don't teach them the basics. Personal responsibility, manners, how to be self-sustaining, basic finance, principles, how to care. There are many examples of people going on to achieve great things in life without achieving in school. I'm one of them. Einstein's another. Nassim Haramein was another. And many in our own group also. Intelligence is one thing. Intellect is another. pensions are another fear-based insurance of having nothing later in life. Is that living? Our working life takes up nearly half of our day. 8 hours work, yes, but what about the time preparing for work or commuting to and from for 5 or in some cases 6 out of every 7 days? So that by the time we get some time off, we're all too knackered to enjoy it. Is that living? Working conditions are like sweatshops, pressure to perform, deliver and conform to make the maximum profits for the very few at the top to gorge on. Via first-class flights, expensive cars, clothes, hookers, you name it, accessories, meals and hotels, whilst you scrape by on $10 to $15 an hour. The cost of that lifestyle then impacts on the children or family life, because if work takes up 10 to 12 hours a day, sleep 8 hours a day, that leaves 4 to 6 hours a day for time with the children, your partner, friends, extended family, cooking, cleaning, personal hygiene, never mind research, self-improvement, hobbies, or even a sex life. Is that living? We are just being drained like batteries. And yet the very people who are being harvested of energy and living are the same ones fighting to keep the status quo. What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The thinking of more equals better. It doesn't. It never has and it never will. And I hope you all understand that. Thinking different, act different and be different. Ours and their old model failed on every single level of society. Thinking and acting different and mindset change is leading from the front. You don't have to be awarded or voted for that position. You just do it. So what is life? Really, for so many on this planet, they have no life. Existing and getting by is not living. Not questioning or not complaining our life is not what we wanted is an acceptance and consent what they offer us, which is nothing. We need to define what we consider as life. One of the members a couple of months ago asked, "What is love?" Do we really know? Again, like the previous pieces, have we defined it? An emotion that is far too casually used in words, memes and throwaway lines. And it's one of the reasons I am not overly enamoured with Christmas or birthday cards. Sweet poems, sugary bass lines, all mass-produced. And none of those words actually came from the heart of the person given the card. It's all fake. Those are not your words written on that card. It was written by a marketing strategy-based group, all designed to sell. But love is not something you sell or buy. It's not a bloody marketing tool. The definition of what is love and the descriptions of it today really goes nowhere near the real meaning of it, and is often dictated now in a society that has lost its way, with the majority of people who don't care beyond their own bubble world. By bubble world, I mean those within their own circle. And yet, as everyone will attest to that listens to this show, even in their own circle, there is bitchiness, comparative and competitive mindsets, envy, and a desire to have or be better than the next person. We've all done it. And again, that has to change. If real love is to be garnered, and I'm pleased to see many of our members stepping away from that bubble, but their world is riddled with it. Love is a higher vibrational frequency. How can many give or experience it with low vibrational frequencies and energies? The answer is they can't. So they fake it. Now, many will not like that statement, but on a frequency level, it is true. If everyone's so loving, again I ask the question, why is the world in such a mess? As clearly as a collective we're not. You have loads of people who don't even love themselves because they're comparing their looks, life, belongings and achievements with other people. If people don't love themselves, which means they don't have the frequency contained within them, how can you put out the same frequency to someone else that you don't have for yourself? As within, so without. Ponder on that for a second. The issue is you can't, but you can fake it. You can say it 1,000 times a day and believe it, but love is not words. Words lie. Words are spells. Actions can be staged or faked, but frequencies don't. You can't really love others if the self doesn't love itself. Because what happens then, it becomes a projection of love. A false image like the mirror. An archetype of what it means. But it's not real love. And society needs to learn that for future development as a species. We're not here to compete, but to grow as a collective. I love my partner or husband or wife because he or she buys me things or they give me what I want. Again, at the base level, that is not love. Love can't be bought. No matter how many cars, homes, or apparel is bought, you can never buy a frequency. Like heaven, it's a state of being. If money bought love, why are all the elites miserable-looking bastards? Why are many of the elites all cavorting with several different partners? Is that love? Love has become distorted by lust and sex, but just having sex with someone does not make it love. Sex is meant to be a pleasure act, which many do alone, with one partner or several partners before they find love, or so they think. Only for many to find out that once the novelty of the sex act wears off, their desire to be with that person is not the same. And then so many seek affairs for various reasons, some of which are valid, some of which are not. but the latter being the higher category. We have seen the rise of people loving the same sex, particularly in the last 3 to 5 decades. But is that based on the sex act or real love, or is it role play? Which many couples do in their own bedrooms to spice things up. But there's a contradiction in loving. Is there a contradiction in loving the same-sex partner? Where the man dresses in female clothes, the female dresses in male clothes. But if lesbians love each other as same-sex partners, why does one play the role of a man? Isn't that defeating the object of loving the same sex? Which kind of supports the fact that the world is messed up and very confused psychologically and also emotionally. And that is why defining love has become all so difficult. Now, I'm not against same-sex partners. In fact, I don't have a say in the matter, and neither should anyone else for that matter. That is their sovereign choice, who they choose to be with, and it's nobody else's business, really. But life is dictated now by people interfering in other people's lives and choices. Partners, married or not, are seen as an object of desire, something to show off to their friends. One group will ask how much he earns, the other will ask is he good in bed. And then when they ask, do you love her? Then comes the awkward moment if the male says yes to his mates. And it generally follows along the lines of, don't be stupid, are you going soft on us? And why don't you sleep around a bit? The female brings her partner to her circle when asked what does he earn or do for a living. Sometimes they lie, fudge the answer, or if they turn around and say he's out of work. Oh, the frowns, puzzled looks, twitching nose and the awkward shifts and the eyes diverted away. And that's the reaction that person gets. You could almost cut the atmosphere with a knife. Those two scenarios, you all know in both genders, that is what happens. You have seen it or done it yourself. But either way, it is damaging and not that conducive to letting love flow, is it? Love is a weakness, they say, particularly in male circles, but it's actually a strength. But I tell you what is a weakness. Relationships with a controlling factor. A relationship with one partner controlling the other is not based on love. But weak individuals exerting what they think is strength and dominance over the other, but is actually showing their own weakness inside. Real love does not have a controlling factor to it. It's a frequency, which is a wave motion. You ride the crest and the fall in the same way. Which means to be flexible, and it is give and take. But anyone in a controlling relationship is not based on love. Controlling is not love. They see you as a threat to their perceived dominance and so attempt to control you. So what is love? Essentially, it's undefinable or not easily describable. It's a state of being. And that is because this world has been tipped into much darkness. Negative thought forms, controlling natures, comparative and competitive mindsets mixed with the showing off the trophy aspect based on looks, physique, or the size of the covered up parts. It has become largely lost in desires, lust, and the fear of being alone, the latter of which keeps many in varying degrees of toxic relationships. That is the base level of it. The higher level, one could say, is where we really lost it, as too few have a real connection to source, that it's often faked and also based on the religious construct of what it's supposed to be. But that construct is so far removed from the real connection to source, it's beyond comprehension. That disconnect done by various means, including our own, is all too similar to the loss of real love here, because both are a frequency. Similar in nature and experience, a longing, a remembrance long in the past. It is, in essence, a feeling, a memory, and experience all rolled into one blissful moment. Collecting that and bottling it and then bringing it back into this existence and accepting it like a memory code then describes better of what is love. Many people can love, but being in love is different. Something that's lost in this manufactured world of marketing, false idols, masks, and perception of what love, life, or human is, not a knowing. You can love many people. You can desire to have sex with many people, but that does not equate to loving someone or being in love, as many of you have all found out. There is a clear distinction between all three, but people don't often define what it is they really want: love, sex, or to be in the love frequency. Three very separate actions, all too often blurred into the one, distorted on a massive scale. Some females go out and expose all kinds of flesh with the desire to get men or women to look at them. But if the average bloke takes more than a glance and look, some react to it badly and exude a volume of cuss words and venom and demeaning terms. But as an overview observer, it is sending mixed messages, is it not? On the one hand, for your vanity, attention, and self-confidence, you want them to look at you. But if they do so and you don't approve of the person looking, it's not acceptable. Yet if it was Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio or Chris Hemsworth, depending on your choice, that is acceptable. Well, actually, it's not. Like most situations in life, we send a plethora of mixed messages and rarely define what we want or what we're looking for. It is that lack of real understanding, as much as communication, that creates so much division between us all. As some awaken to the higher forms of awakening, and the memory of those frequencies start to return, the soul family frequencies, the soul partner frequencies of the past begin to stir up within you. And you may find you may be attracted to people you've never met in the physical. Under normal circumstances in the physical, that is desire, a longing to be connected to something or someone. But this is different. It's not necessarily the person that is desired, but the frequency that person emits from a long time in the past. An enduring memory of the all-encompassing frequency that is love. But the common misconception in life is to find that love frequency, that it must come from the external connection. But like everything else, it comes from within. The mastery of the self and the sword makes that connection all so much easier. So what has become clear in these pieces tonight is we're not very good at defining matters. What is and what isn't. Without that ability or realization to define things, how can you possibly use your own innate abilities and manifest a better way or path? Do you know what you're asking for? Throwaway statements like, I want a better life, is not a definition, it's just a statement. You have not defined what that better life entails, or what is human, or what is love. Learn to define, then throw in your imagination, which brings in manifest and not magic, but your own inherent abilities that changes your timeline and subsequently your life. Again, it's all in the words. The word fine, F-I-N-E, originally around 1200s meant a termination, end of and so death. D is to move away from. So to define things, you are moving away from the end and to a new beginning. What happens next? Like mentioned earlier, a common saying on this show, and also Kim to the Clowns. Okay, so are you going to do this? Fine. But what happens next? And at the end of the day, it all comes down to, how did you love?